Yeah.
And is it connected to you just have the data on the phone?
Mm-hmm. I'll move to the computer soon. Okay, so to really understand Chanukah, we have to understand a little bit of history. Okay? So let's look at history a little bit. So we have the Purim story. The Purim story is in the time of between Churban Bayis Rishon and Churban Bayis Sheni. Okay? The Malchus over there is Malchus Paras Amadai. Okay? And the whole topic of the Purim story is around the Beis HaMikdash. He's making a party the Beis HaMikdash is not going to be rebuilt, right? Yes, going to be rebuilt. His son Koresh sends the Beis HaMikdash to rebuild, right? And then we have a whole tkufa of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, in this tkufa, what happens in the world powers is Yavan, right? Alexander Mokdan, Alexander the Great, he goes from Greece, and if you look at the map, it's pretty far. He goes all the way across Turkey, all the way across Eretz Yisrael. Then he goes into Syria. He goes into Iran, right? Not Iran, Iraq. And he is Kovesh Bavel, where Paras Amadai is.
He goes to Eretz Yisrael?
He goes through Eretz Yisrael, right? And he basically takes over the world, but he doesn't only take over the world, he gives a different theology, a different culture into the world. Greek culture, which is the beginning of Roman culture, right, is very much based on thought. It's based on intellect of Greek, what do you call it, philosophy.
What was Persian culture based on?
What? Persian culture was based on pleasure. In case you hadn't noticed about Achashverosh. Right? But Greek culture was a very advanced culture, based on a lot of philosophy and thought, science, right? And they came and took over the world, and they took over the world not only in the sense that they were controlled, but they took over the world in the sense of what's valuable. People started idolizing the thought process, and people who are smarter and people who are more developed intellectually. And it's not only a shift in the control of the world, it's actually a shift in the spiritual version of the world. Because it says in Seder Olam that the year that Malchus Yavan took over the world is the same year that Nevuah stopped in the world. Right? In the Bayis Sheni, in the beginning of Bayis Sheni, there were still Nevi'im. Nevi'im, Zechariah, Chagai, Malachi, they were people who were mitnabeh, they gave a prophecy of the fact that Beis HaMikdash is going to be rebuilt. Right? And they were directing Klal Yisrael still this Nevuah. But at that point, when they died, Nevuah stopped in the world. And like it says in the Mishnah of Pirkei Avos, right?
This is the second temple?
This is in the beginning of the second temple. Right?
The second temple when the Nevuah died?
Nevuah stopped.
So Nevuah stopped while the second Beis HaMikdash was up?
Correct. Nevuah started the first Beis HaMikdash, and there were people called Anshe Knesses HaGedolah, and they were in Chutz La'aretz. So Mordechai was one Anshe Knesses HaGedolah, and they were miyaseh the mashal tefillah, right? They made a lot of takanas. Ezra and Nehemiah made takanas of Shabbos and things like that. But at a certain point, they died, and what took over was what we have. It's called Chachamim, right? What does it say in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos? Moshe Masal is Yeshua. Yeshua le Zikanim. Zikanim Leviim. Leviim Masal le Anshe Knesses HaGedolah. Shimon HaTzadik has Mishiore Anshe Knesses HaGedolah. Who haya omer, right? So Shimon HaTzadik is the switch, right? There were Anshe Knesses HaGedolah had Nevi'im inside of it, and Shimon HaTzadik came in. What his was the beginning of the tkufa of the shift between Nevuah and what's called Torah Shebal Peh, right? The Mishnayos, you notice that we didn't have people in the Mishnayos before Shimon HaTzadik. How come we don't have a Chag Haya Omer, Mordechai Tzaddik Haya Omer? Doesn't exist, right? Because
the Mishnah was right after the Nevi'im
stopped. Right. The Seder of Torah Shebal Peh is a chiddush that happened in the world exactly in correlation to when Malchus Yavan started in the world, which explains something very deep, which is we know the story, it says in the Gemara and Talmud, that Alexander Mokdan came to Yerushalayim, right? And he was going to destroy it.
What's his name?
Alexander Mokdan, Alexander the Great. right? And he was outside of Yerushalayim, and his plan was to level the city. Okay,
This is the second temple?
this is in the second temple, right?
And the Hanukkah story was in the first or second?
No, this is the Chanukah story to come soon,
Oh, it has
right? We were before the Chanukah story. Okay, so Alexander Mokdan came in, and he was standing outside Yerushalayim. He's going to destroy Yerushalayim. Shimon HaTzadik and all the Klal Yisrael inside, and like, okay, they're shaking in their boots. What's going to happen, right? So Shimon HaTzadik puts on bidei kehuna. He walks out by himself to face this army. Okay, Alexander the Great is on top of his horse with his sword. He gets off his horse, bows down to Shimon HaTzadik, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "When I go to war, any war that I win, I see this person's face in Shamayim, I know I'm going to win the war."
He was also a high-level person. He was a spiritual person.
He had a shlichus from Shamayim, right? That he was bringing a new aura into the world, what Hashem wanted. But the thing is, why in the world is Shimon HaTzadik the symbol of his successful conquest? The answer is because Alexander Mokdan and Shimon HaTzadik were part of the same system. In other words, what's the difference between Nevuah and Mishnah?
One is seeing, one is hearing. One is precise, one is our work that we need to build.
Okay, there is a difference, but there's a principal difference is that one is Hashem speaking to you. It's Devar Hashem. And therefore it's completely conclusive, it's completely clear. Mm-hmm. And the methodology of that happening is that the neshama is a kli for the words of Hashem, right? That neshama is connected to chelik elokam imal and is able to bring the words of Hashem in, and the body, the seichel, is translating to the point at which we can interpret that Hashem spoke to me. But the makar of this relationship is how clearly the neshama is connecting to Hashem and able to show up in the body, right? Which is why bi'ikar nevuah has to be in Eretz Yisrael, because Eretz Yisrael is the place where the neshama klalis of Am Yisrael, which is the Shechina, is expressed in the body, which is Eretz Yisrael. So if this Shechina is clear in Am Yisrael, it can bring down Devar Hashem. It's the place where Hashem's words are shown, and therefore it can be shown in the goof of Eretz Yisrael. In that place, you can have the words of Hashem come down. You go to Chutz La'aretz, which is a place, a kli, where it is not a place, a kli for the Shechina, right? And therefore the expression of the Hashem can't come into the world, therefore it's not possible, right? So the Nevuah is something which...
It's not possible because there's something about the place, or there's something about the way the place affects the person that means that the people not being in Eretz Yisrael are no longer able to receive Nevuah.
It's the same thing. The place and the people are one, right? The kli of the world is not a place where you're able to see Devar Hashem. It's a block. The only way you can see Devar Hashem is if you have a neshama which can interpret Devar Hashem, and a place which is like a neshama, which is able to be a kli for this neshama. And let's say the same way you can see nisim in Eretz Yisrael, you can't see in Chutz La'aretz, right? Why can you see that? Because the place allows the expression of Hashem more than a different place where it's there, the hanhaga, the ratzon of Hashem in that world is the sar, is the malach that brings that type of expression of Hashem, and that type of expression of Hashem is limiting. It's not showing Hashem in the same way, right? It's specifically trying to bring out this culture and this type of ummah, which is not as a clear version of Hashem as much as Am Yisrael is in Eretz Yisrael, where Tamid ein lo Hashem v'ami meish sana arach v'sashana. Okay, so Chutz La'aretz is a place where it's naged, blocks nevuah. And the only way you can get nevuah in Chutz La'aretz is if you already had it in Eretz Yisrael, you already have that type of connection, you can continue it in Chutz La'aretz. But otherwise you can't get nevuah in Eretz Yisrael, in Chutz La'aretz. So Eretz Yisrael, in the time after the beginning of Bayis Sheni, was a place where the Shechina could not show up. There was too much chet, and therefore it wasn't possible for the ability to have nevuah in the world.
Were they in Eretz Yisrael then?
They came back. Ezra and Nehemiah brought Am Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael. They rebuilt the Beis HaMikdash. There were still Nevi'im. And after that point, Alexander came right? And he could have destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Instead of destroying the Beis HaMikdash, he changed it. He took the Nevuah out of the world and he replaced it with the foundation which allowed for Shimon HaTzadik to be in the world. What's the foundation of the new world? Thought. The foundation of the world is logical thought. Nevuah is not based on logical thought. You're just receiving. You open yourself up and you have words, you have total clarity.
That was the world.
That
was the world was just receiving.
Receiving. And everybody had spiritual concept. Even if you didn't have Nevuah of Hashem, you had some other thing you received, some spiritual concept.
I can't handle logic. I can't take logic.
Oh, I'll explain to you why. That's something of this generation. But for a long time, Klal Yisrael functioned completely on logic. Torah Sheba'al Peh is all about logic. It's all about, this is the getter of the halacha. I have this idea, I have a kasha over here, a teretz over here, it makes sense over here, a proof over here. It's all working at logic.
We all say that came from the Greeks?
No. The Greeks were the foundation. They changed the world, that now the world can receive this type of ideas. And this is exactly the point. The Greeks, the representation of Torah Sheba'al Peh can be just another version of Einstein, right? It can be just a smart way of looking at the world, right? But you can still have competition. That was pretty smart, but I can say something smarter. I have this idea, right? Which is why Haskalah, which is why it was a very big competition with Torah Sheba'al Peh, right? Because, wow, that's a pretty idea, but now we're enlightened. We have even this idea. The Greeks came and they said, well, that's pretty smart, but look what Aristotle said. Even better, right? So that's why the Greeks were able to compete with Torah Sheba'al Peh, and they were actually threatened by it to the point of which, after a certain point, not when Alexander was around and Shimon HaTzadik was around, then there was peace. But what came in, all the Greek culture came into Am Yisrael, and then there was a tenuah called Misyavnim, where people thought, you know what, that's a pretty cool thing, but I got something cooler, so much more amazing. And therefore I'm going to leave this. And then because they were so threatened by the Torah Sheba'al Peh, they didn't like this possibility that maybe I outsmart you, right? So they tried to put out that fire. And they tried to have no expression of Torah Sheba'al Peh in the world, and they tried to shut down anything that had to do with Chachamim, like Kiddush HaChodesh, anything that made Chachamim supernatural, that was like, you have something above us. They tried to separate Am Yisrael from Hashem, and that's what it says in Chazal, that Yavan is Choshech, in its Nirmaz in Parshas Bereshis, and it says the Arba Malchius, Tohu v'Vohu v'Choshech al Pnei Tehom. Choshech al Pnei Tehom, Choshech is Yavan. Why Machshichim Bnei Yisrael with Gezerosem? Because they said, Kisfu al Keren Ashar, she'ein lanu chelik b'Elokei Yisrael. Which means a very deep thing. It means that you have ideas, okay, but you don't have nevuah. You don't have Hashem speaking down to you. Hashem is maybe a shemayim l'Hashem, but we have ideas. We have brains. We think about stuff, and we come to conclusions. And you come to conclusions. Who says your conclusion is better than ours? We have our conclusion. We think ours is better than yours. You have all these ideas of Beis HaMikdash and Karbanos and the menorah.
Let us keep our religion.
Good. That's a very important thing. Why did the Yevanim not let us keep our thing? Because we are a threat. You know why we're a threat?
Why?
Because the way Torah Sheba'al Peh works is very different than the way Chachma works. Even though the Kli, the place where it shows up is in Chachma, but we believe that we have, like the Gemara says in Megillah, Yagata umatzasa tamin. If you work hard in Torah and you find it, then you should believe. Lashon of Mitzia means it's not something that you worked for, you earned. We create all of this thought, backwards and forwards and thinking, but the real reason what we're getting is again Dvar Hashem coming into the seichel of a person and giving him a different, more developed version of the world, which is basically Hashem, which is basically Torah's Emes, which is a higher place than Chachma. So we do. Shimon HaTzadik looks like Alexander the Great. He has the same logical format, but what he's being makabel is from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Masr to Yeshua. Yeshua is Zakanim Lachachamim, and the Zakanim Nevi'im. Nevi'im Masu Anshe Nes Gadola. It's the same Misorah. It's just a different way of getting it. Instead of opening yourself up and saying Hashem spoke to me, right? We do this, then we do this, then we do this, and then Hashem shows up in all of this Chachma, and we have Torah's Hashem. Now that was very threatening to the Yavanim because it means that they have something above us. Take, for example, you can see this in the parashiyos, which we learn during Chanukah. Paro says, Yosef comes and he translates the chalomos of Paro. And Paro says a very strange thing to him. He says, is there anyone who's more chacham v'navon mi'ish hazeh? Now, I don't get it. This guy came, Sachakol, he translates dreams. Why is suddenly he get to be the smartest man in the universe? Like, where did that come in from, right? What do the psukim say? Vayomer Paro el Yosef, acharei hodia Elohim oischa kol asher zos, ein navon v'chacham kamoscha. You're the smartest person in the whole world. Smarter than Einstein. Why? So the beginning of the pasuk is the secret. Acharei hodia Elohim oischa kol azos. You're not coming from the standard ways of thinking about the world. You're coming from a higher source. The source of Elohim, which is above, which is governing all of these things. So there's no one who can compete with you. Because all we get is what we see down here. But the source of what made this all happen, we don't get connected to, right? So there's no one who's smarter than you. So the Yevanim did not like that. They didn't like this hierarchy and saying we're smart. We have Kabbalah, we have things that are from Moshe Sinai. They wanted, I have no problem if you're talking to me on my level, but if you tell me that everything I'm saying is invalid because you came from God, that's really, really annoying, right? I'm actually going to kill you, right? I have to wipe you out because you're basically giving myself all of what I did illegitimacy, right? So Yavan came to stamp out the kedusha of Am Yisrael. They didn't have a problem with the chachma of Am Yisrael. You can be as smart as you want, but don't tell me that chachma has something in it above me. Okay, that's the reka, the story of what's going on in the Chanukah story.
Why was Yavan was trying to convince the Jews' philosophy? They were trying to get them to argue with them?
They did. Once Alexander Mukdam came into Eretz in Yerushalayim, obviously all of the Greek culture came into Yerushalayim also. So the people were learning philosophy and learned philosophy till way into 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years later, talking about at least 1,500 years later. No, more than that. 1,700, 1,800 years later. The people are still learning philosophy until Be'erech, the 15, 1600s, where Am Yisrael left philosophy in a deep way. But it still gave birth the whole enlightenment and the Haskalah, right? And the whole way of thinking about the world differently that made fry people, not from people, right? So we're still dealing with the effects of that world, but the difference is that we don't, if you use Torah Sheba'al Peh, you can harness all of that energy, harness all of that logical thinking. The Rambam's whole way of looking at the world and the way he wrote his Sefer is based on Aristotle. Right? It's based on a very organized thinking of philosophy. But what he did was, he took all of this philosophy and he made it to be a kli for a Chachma Elyon, a Chachma from Hashem, that showed up through the logical constructs of philosophy. Right? What?
That's fascinating. It's so strange to have to go all the way to killing. I hear it.
They're annoyed. If I come and say you everything you say, but I'm smarter than you. All right? If you talk to me in my level, I have no problem with you. But if you tell me you're above me, right, then you threaten my very existence. I'm going to kill you.
If you're that type, Greeks were into that. Hey,
like today also.
We'll meet you down at what was it called, where they had the fight? I'll meet you at the ring.
The arena?
That was it. Fight for your death.
Right. So, now, all of this is the backdrop of the Chanukah story. Okay? Now, let's see, what do they do? They came in and they trashed the Beis HaMikdash.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
Today, being all the logic that we have
Mm-hmm.
is, you said it's not from the Greeks. It's from before the Greeks.
No, the Greeks brought a different way of approaching the world. They brought in logic. And Torah Shebal Peh was born from that. That's why Shimon HaTzadik's face was before Alexander Mokdan, because the aura that Shimon HaTzadik needs to bring into the world, which is basically the being of Torah Shebal Peh, was the reason why Alexander Mokdan was able to take over the world. Because we needed the world to function through philosophy and intellectual thought in order for Torah Shebal Peh to be in the world. We needed them, the rules of logic, in order for Torah Shebal Peh to be successful. Whole Gemara is based on the rules of logic.
And that was because of not because of Alexander, but because of Shimon HaTzadik.
Exactly.
What did Shimon HaTzadik? What did Hashem give him to be able to do that?
He was the beginning of the Mesorah of Torah Shebal Peh, where instead of now receiving halachas from Shamayim, right, a nevuah, what they did was they had the Mesorah of halachas, and they went back and forth and decided if this is right and this is right, and we have a kasha over here and a teretz over here, and it doesn't make sense. So this way, they use logic to and also Mesorah, but they use a lot of logic to figure out what Hashem wants.
Where did that light come from?
So that's the difference. Yavan came from their own kochos. We sat down, Aristotle, a smart guy, and he figured it all out. Shimon HaTzadik was a Mesorah. He was Mekabel Halacha Moshe Sinai. All the Mishnayos, what does a Mishnah mean? What's the translation of the word Mishnah? It's Lashon of Shinun, right? The Tanoim's job was to say over the Mesorah, to record it and to continue it. So we're based on Halacha Moshe Sinai, Torah Shebal Peh, which existed by the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? But it wasn't the dominant force, because when Hashem is talking to you, you don't have to use your seichel. Right? When the halachas of Yeshayahu, when he said about Shabbos, in Toshiv and Shabbos, Asos Chafatzecha V'Yom Kadri. He came down. Yeshayahu said, "Oh, Hashem's telling me in Toshiv and Shabbos Asos Chafatzecha Yom Kadri." Now I know.
It does happen to be in the Torah.
It's
not where he got it from.
It's an explanation of the Torah. It's an addition, because it was a nevuah that was nischadish, right? It's not Moshe Rabbeinu was makabel. The Gemara in Bracha says all the nevuahs that happened, Moshe Rabbeinu had them first, right? So that's why it says that the Nevi'im saw what Moshe Rabbeinu already had seen. He brought down all the Torah, but it was his job to bring into the world that beforehand it wasn't necessarily known, right? Shabbos shifted when Yeshayahu Navi said these things about Shabbos Aglecha. But it's not the same with what Ezra and Nehemiah did. Ezra and Nehemiah made Gzeros Chachamim. They put in what the Chachamim thought needs to be in the world. Hashem didn't say that. Muksa is not from Hashem, right? The halachas of the Gzeros Rabbanan, they made up. They understood that in order for us to really connect to the halacha, we need these things in the world.
And that was from not Kabbalah, but that was from logic.
Correct. Anshe Knesset Gedolah said, if this happens, then this will happen. It's a Gzeir over here, so we have to do this, right? They created a whole new Torah in some ways that was based on the Mesorah, right? But it was the Mesorah, using the Mesorah and thinking about it from a logical construct.
What was the reason that the Nevuah disappeared from the world again?
The reason the Nevuah disappeared in the world was because the lack of the amount of Chatoim there was in the world didn't allow for the Nevuah to be, the world blocked that type of spiritual energy.
How were people doing so many Chatoim if they had Nevuah?
Because Zelu Mazdeh As Elohim. So if every time you have a spiritual positive koach, you have Keneged a spiritual negative koach. And what is that? Avodah Zarah. So the Milchama Avodah Zarah also changed. You don't see the Cheta Avodah Zarah. You see what was plaguing Am Yisrael in Bayis Rishon, right? Stopped. And it says in the Gemara in Yuma that Anshe Knesset Gedolah took it out of the world. They prayed that there shouldn't be this incredible spiritual understanding in the world, because it made people do huge chatayim through the Avodah Zarah.
Could be that today Avodah Zarah is coming back.
Okay, so amazing. What you said before about you hate logic, right? And
I'm getting exposed to it more and more. Like every course that I'm going, if I'm doing wherever I'm going, I'm hearing it from other people. I know if I change and I hear like a different world, I live in a different world, or everyone changed. I don't know. Like
the world is changing. The world is changing. If you notice, That's why TikTok is so powerful, because people don't have any, they can't think, right? But they can feel. They can experience. So people want experiences, they don't want a lot of thought, right? The thought has to touch their heart.
Like when doing the reverse, of course, it's just breathing. The whole thing is okay, the whole logic.
Exactly.
When you're sitting with your therapist, you just hack and China to the logic and the logic, and you don't come to anything. Reversing, you go right to the breathing of the feeling that you experience, and you heal yourself through breathing, full breathe. That at that time you breathe like this. Okay, the whole logic, you know.
Right. So the same thing we're doing in mitzvahs. Don't tell me halacha now. We're all this logical like this, like this. I need to experience it. It needs to be meaningful.
That comes from our generation.
Yes, because the world is going back towards Nevuah. It's going back towards the Shekhinah coming into the world, so people have experiential godly experiences, not thought process godly experiences.
So, Rabbi, what you're saying is when back before Shimon HaTzadik, before then, when we had Kabbalah,
We had Nevuah.
It was experimental.
Experiential, for sure.
Then that disappeared because they did Chatayim, and then there was no Nevuah in the world. Then there was, for thousands of years, there was logic.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're saying because we're coming closer back to the...
We're coming into Eretz Yisrael after all the Golos of Edom and all of the Tikkunim that happens. Now we're getting prepared for the Geula. The more the Geula comes into the world, the more Das Hashem comes into the world, and everybody is going to be in a Navi. You're not going to have to talk to your friend and have a Nevuah. You're not going to have to talk to Yeshayahu. What? Exactly.
Could we say that now with the technology, it's going to happen, where we're not going to have to communicate with one another? Is that in a way, is a technology, is that part of Nevuah, or it's on two separate?
Just like Alexander Moktan was the foundation for Torah Sheba'al Peh, technology is the foundation for the experience of godliness in the world. That's why we have so many mishalim of things that go above the physical world. You can talk to somebody in the other side of the world by holding this funny thing, right? That's pretty crazy. Right, right. So it's the beginning of letting people leave the consciousness of the confines of what they usually are used to and be able to go above that. One of virtual reality is the same thing. What does virtual reality say? Whatever I think about, that's true, right? So that means you can actually have an experience that's above the confines of your world, because that's where my machshavos are, right? So you can actually, Adam Rishon was able to roya mi sofa olam ad sofa olam. How did he do that? Right? Because he was connected to the whole world. Whatever he put his mind, that's where he was, right? So we're getting closer to that. The internet is a way of combining the entire world to one tiny little world, right? You can see it have everything in front of you. So that's the physical expression of what's going to be very clear for every single person, right? That the whole world is all one, and you can experience all of it, right?
And that's how you can experience all of it. You think you can experience all of it, and then you see you don't get anywhere. You gotta do, okay, send me a message, send me you can't, at the end of the day, you're one person. You gotta choose your...
Because we don't have the kalim yet. Because it's an aura that we can't hold into. But at a certain point, you will be able to. You'll be able to experience all of the oneness of the world inside of you at the same time. Because it's all one. Everything is Hashem. So you're just seeing another expression of Hashem. You know what that means? What you're understanding is see the world in Pirud, which means this is not this. I can't put the two things together. But if you have the Kolel, which is all of it is about expressing Hashem, so it's like me saying that your eyes are a stira to your hands. Right? They all work together. I experience all of you when I see you. So every element of the world will fit like a puzzle with every element of the world, and it won't be confusing. You won't be distracted by this and not be able to see this, right? Okay? So now we have an understanding. You understand what you said is what the world is there, but to understand the story of Chanukah, you have to understand what the fight, what was the hastara that preceded Chanukah, and what was the light that Chanukah brought into the world that was the antithesis of what Yavin was trying to put into the world.
Can I check what I got so far?
Sure.
And I'm not sure I stay focused all the time, so I want to make sure I'm holding what I did get.
Can I ask a question before you ask? Do you have a chance to have those papers? What did you learn today?
Oh, you laughed.
Mm-hmm.
I need to-
Yeah, Ellie.
What I got so far is we're mamish at the point of transition from Nevuah, which is where Hashem tells us the way it is, to Chachma, but we have an elevated Chachma. Which means as the Greeks are conquering the world, same day Nevuah disappears. But as Chachma is conquering the world, we have a certain Chachma where we use the same kelim, but when we invest effort and energy and open ourselves up to receiving, so Hashem gives us our Torah, and that is and what's it called?
But it's hidden within the Chachma, right? You can still be confused. It looks very similar, but really it's Hashem showing up in logic.
And also it's not really the full picture anyway.
What does that mean?
It means there are plenty of incredible Talmidei Chachamim who invest lots of energy into Torah and don't reach deep understandings.
Right. So that's you're saying that the way it comes in is there's a limit to the kli that it comes in. The truth is, Nevuah is the same way. A person has to be very zach in their midos.
In Nevuah, there was more spiritual consciousness, which means the degree to which the world could be conceived was less, I assume.
Why? You have a whole world of conceiving the world through Avodah Zarah, which was extremely prevalent then. That's pretty misconceiving.
Well, that's true. Okay, fair. I'll take that back.
In every generation, you have choice between Chaim and Mavis. There's no generation which is like, oh yeah, everything's clear and everything's totally the way it's supposed to be. There's no such thing. Right? That would have been a Bechira in the world. What time is it now?
12:30.
Okay, great. Okay, clear?
Yeah, was there something else I should have walked away with?
That's your decision.
No, I mean, is there something else that you meant to emphasize?
I just meant to emphasize that one of the things you have to always understand is every part of life is a mahalach of Eloki to bring the world to a specific place, and every step has a certain tikkun that brings into the world that when we have a nation running the world, what they're really suggesting is a way to block Hashem's malchus, and then the different experiences we have are showing that that block is not true.
I didn't.
So let's say, for example, Yavan brought a new aura into the world, which is extremely important.
Yay.
Extremely important, right? It's the way the whole world now functions is through science. And yet, they try to make it everything. And science is extremely limited. The reasons why science is limited, main point, is because it doesn't understand, all it understands is what, right? You're evaluating the scientific method, right? You're proving things, and that's it. But you don't, whatever is above your proof, you can't experience, right? The whole purpose, the whole way Torah works is first I receive and then I understand. Right? So I know this is to be true because halacha moshe Sinai, because it's a Mesorah, bo navin et zeh, right? Which means puts you in a totally different space of able to understand. Because you're not only understanding what is in the world, you're understanding the ratzon of the one who created the world and why he's doing in this world, right? The Greeks that don't look at the world and saying, I see someone behind it. I see the world. I don't see someone behind it. Right? Like if you have this cup on the table. So you don't just see a cup on the table, you ask your question, why is the cup on the table? Right? They don't ask question is why is there gravity? They don't ask the question is why does fire go up? That's not a question, because I have no idea. All I know is the fire goes up. And I'll explain to you exactly how fire works. It's the carbon, it burns this, all these things, right? But if you're a Jew, you understand, wait a minute. The reason why there is fire in the world is to allow us to do this mitzvah and to do this mitzvah and to do this, right? All these, we have a ratzon of the borei in everything. I want the world to have the opportunity to have a nisayon of stealing. Therefore, I put money into the world, and you can have a nisayon of being yashar and being able to use your money in a holy way, and that you're more metukan. All these ideas starts with the fact there is a ratzon Hashem. And because there's Ratzon Hashem, things work not on the rules of the world, things work on His rules. And how was this shown the most in the world? Because Yavan was the most powerful nation in the world. They had the most advanced army, okay? And they were totally dominant of Am Yisrael. They decided to try to wipe out the Shemen, the Chacham of Am Yisrael, right? Why is the Chacham Shemen? Shemen Turak Shmecha, right? Is Lashon Ashir Hashem. Shemen is one of the things Torah is called the Shemen. Why? Because it goes above all of the other liquids. It's a higher realm than all the other liquids. So they tried to wipe out the Shemen, the Chachma of Am Yisrael. Now, the Neshama of Am Yisrael wasn't able to tolerate this. So we had people who were Heiru Nafsham, the Chashmonaim, and they said, no, we're going to fight. Now, you have to realize, Chashmonaim fighting was a serious suicide. Right? What do we learn this from? The Chavetz Chaim, in 1900s, when the Bolsheviks came over and took over Russia, he had charata that he didn't go fight with them. And they already told him, you're not going to win, obviously. He's like, that's not the point. In other words, the Chashmonaim did not fight in order because they thought they were going to win. They fought because there needs to be a fight. It can't be that we're going to accept the fact that Torah is going to be taken away from us and we're going to be replaced by Chachma Yavanis. So they were Moser Nefesh, right? Mesiris Nefesh means they came from a higher place. They came from a place of not logic. They didn't come from a place of, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Let's do this. Let's go fight with the most powerful army in the world. This is like, my neshama is burning now. I'm going to be close to Hashem now. I don't care what happens. And there's a few people started off with guerrilla warfare, and they ended up beating the most powerful army in the world. How does that even make sense? The answer is, it doesn't make sense. If you work the world with logic, and there's no ratzon behind all of this logic, there's no one minahel the world, there's no way that can happen. Right? But because all of this whole world, all of this chachma is actually a way of expressing the ratzon of Hashem, when people connect to that ratzon, when people allow themselves to be a kli with their mesiras nefesh, what happens is, through the wars, through the tactics, through the normal expressions of the world, Hashem shows up. And therefore you can have a normal world, normal war, people guerrilla warfare, and it looks like, it just happens, and really what happened was, Hashem made this tiny army beat this huge army. There was a very small amount. You can look in the book of the Maccabees, see the exact amount, but a very small amount of people, right? And by the way, someone told me that in West Point, there's a lot of statues of different generals. Mm-hmm. One of them is Yehuda Maccabee, because he's the greatest general. This tiny little army beat this incredible army. What does that mean? Their tfisa of it, it's like, the way this works, obviously,
There's no God in Greek philosophy.
It's just like, okay, he's just good. He was just a good fighter, obviously.
Do Greeks believe in any gods?
I'm not an expert in Greek mythology, but there's definitely a whole thing over there of different types of gods, but they're physical, they're people. They're this god of this and the god of this, and they have fights and they have personalities, and they're limited to a human expression. They're limited to our understanding.
Right. And did they believe like there was a god of the Leonim and he just stayed there, and then there was other gods in the Tefton?
Aristotle writes, if there is a creator of the world, it's not relevant because it's nothing to do with us. We don't have an experience of it. It's something. If he did it, he left it. It's not important anymore. What I experience is the world in front of me, and the world in front of me, I don't see him here.
But I don't understand why is the notion of gods conceivable in Greek culture?
What did you say?
Why do they accept gods at all?
It's because
Once the creator is not relevant, so why is Athena relevant?
Right. So if you understand that there's forces of nature,
Yeah.
right? Forces of nature, as science discovers them. Let's say there's a volcano, right, that explodes, right? Or there's weather patterns, right? Or there's protons and neutrons, and they have their own way of functioning, right? So if you're just a little bit more primitive, you'll think about those things as godly kochos, right? So then they defined it more as the natures of the world ground, and they got less primitive, and they understood it in a very technical technical, intellectual way. But they were just discussing how they see forces of the universe and how are they going to understand it. They put it in concepts of higher powers. What's the difference? You call it higher powers, you call it rules of nature that you can't control.
What did we say about when Alexander, he came to Eretz Yisrael, and Shimon HaTzadik already had the ability for logic?
Shimon HaTzadik was the beginning of the Torah being processed through logic. Okay? So in order for the world to receive that, there needed to be a different change in the world. In other words, Alexander had to go and change the whole culture of how people approach things.
Meaning it wasn't Shimon HaTzadik that changed how
Right.
it was actually...
Exactly.
Why did we need a Torah, like, and David's probably not the best person, why did we have someone like him change? Why wasn't the Jewish leaders?
Because that's exactly the point. That's the relationship between Goyim and Jews. Goyim also have a huge impact in the world. They facilitate the Jews' job. Okay? So, in order for the Gilui of Hashem to come into the world through Torah Shebaal Peh, there needed to be a change in the whole world. Who's going to make that change? The Goy. But that will allow the Jewish nation to now show up in the world, bringing in Torah Shebaal Peh, and then it can express itself all over the world because the Goyim created that foundation where now logic is what's governing everything. Right? This is a very important thing to understand. We have a very deep relationship with the rest of the world. They are facilitating. We are Kohanim, right? We are the deal with the Kodesh, and they deal with the Chol. But the Chol is the Kli to receive the Kodesh, right? So we're not in a fight with them necessarily.
I have a question. I don't know if it's shy, but if not, so are the going want to also be Kohanim? That they're jealous of, that they hate us?
Well, it says in the Gemara in Shabbos that the words it's called Sinai because it's the sin and the samach are switch. Because when Har Sinai happens, it's Yorda Sina La'olam.
But Allah Yaakov was even before when Yaakov was still brother.
Okay, but what's the shorish of the Sina of Esav? Amalei Achareva, which is whatever he. Right? There's a fight between the two Lu'umim. Who is going to control Olam Hazeh? The problem is not their existence. The problem is that one is in control of the other. And if Esav doesn't accept the Malchus of Yaakov, then he actually is doing himself a nezek. Because when Am Yisrael are a Melech, Hashem is the Melech, and everybody has Shefa. But they don't want a Malchus above them, so they fight and have their own Malchus. It says in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that in around Daf Yud Zayin or something, that one of the parties, one of the Yom Tovim that Rome had was they had one person dressed up like Esav, one person dressed up like Yaakov, that he had a limp, right? And they had Esav on top of Yaakov, right? In other words, till the time of Rome, they're still fighting who's going to be in charge of the world, right? We're in charge. We're the best. We tell you what to do, right? Whereas if they would accept the Malchus of Eretz Yisrael, right? Ad Hayom, right? Us having autonomy on our own country, they're fighting with us not to have it. Why don't you just stay out of our business? No, we're in charge. We don't want you to make decisions, right? Because they don't want to relinquish the Malchus, just like they don't want to have Hashem run their life, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't understand why is this a good thing that we have Alexander bring this philosophy influence on us? Like it sounds like you put it in a positive light.
It's a positive light. You see that from the fact Shimon HaTzadik's face was helping him, right? It's a positive light because all of the Limud Torah that existed from that time until now was all logical. Look at Limud of Gemara.
So you're saying, but I don't understand because we said that Shimon HaTzadik had that before him.
No, he
Alexander.
didn't. He maybe that was what he developed in himself. We had Torah Shebaal Peh, but for it to be the way the world functions, That was Alexander's job. It was necessary for Torah Sheba'al Peh to become the theology of Judaism, how people related to Hashem through limud of halacha, through limud of understanding Ratzon Hashem, as opposed to just going to the Navi and saying, Hashem spoke to me. So how do you make that shift internationally? How do you make that shift in all the Jewish people? Right? It's not enough just to have Chachamim who had a Mesorah. There has to be the way the whole Am interfaces now with Hashem. That change can only happen on a grand level of a melech who totally shifts the world.
Wasn't there a lot of negative with it?
Yes.
They started influencing the Jews to think logical and not think, I don't know, the Torah way of thinking. What's the Torah way of thinking?
It's the point is like this: is that there's a logic, but what the logic is your end all be all. It's like I think about it like you had an idea, but I think a smarter idea. So that's it. I drop your idea. Or the Torah's version is this I know is true. I accepted this from Moshe Rabbeinu. Now let's understand it. I'm not gonna doubt it. Let's say I don't understand it. I still accept it as truth. I still am gonna until I get it, and I'm gonna omel, and there might be things that I don't understand. Chok, I don't understand it. That's totally fine with me. That isn't fine with the Greek theology. If you don't, it doesn't make sense. You throw it out. That's the whole.
So basically, the Jews absorbed the Greek theology of understanding the why.
Understanding how it works, the structure, logical structure, the things
structure of everything that was given from Halacha from Moshe Sinai.
Yes, and they spend time understanding it more and more, and that was the way they changed. That was the way they become connected to Hashem, and how they brought Hashem into the world through thinking about all of His ratzon, through thinking about all the rules that He gave, and understanding the depth of it and exactly how it works and the mechanics of it and the logical construct. That was the way Hashem changed, put Himself in Jews.
And that was from Greek theology?
Greek theology was the method, what allowed that a Jew can now use, what kalim does he use to bring all of that aura inside of him?
So we needed the Greeks basically?
Yes. In order for Torah Sheba'al Peh to be what everybody used to connect to Hashem, you needed the Greeks to change the world.
Shimon Tzadik and his friends couldn't do it?
No. Because the world was functioning in a way that was based on spiritual coming down to the world through Hashem, right? Through just speaking to us. So that you can't have people just decide one day, okay, we're not going to look up to hear Dvar Hashem. We're not going to go to the prophet. We're going to figure it out ourselves. That's a huge shift, right? If someone didn't come and indoctrinate that in a positive light, in a cultural light, in a world power light, when it says a world power, you know what it does? It says people, they got it the right way, because they're in charge of everything, right? Right? That's why the Eastern world dropped a lot of their theology, because they saw the conquest of the Western world in our time, right? So a conquestor has impact because people think he's the guy who's got it made, right? So that energy of coming in and which was necessary to say, okay, he's got the right thing, that was necessary for all of Am Yisrael to have that experience in order for them to mekabel now the way of relating to Hashem through Torah Sheba'al Peh.
I got lost over there.
The only way that a Jew can change how he viewed what he gets from Shamayim, right? The Jew until then was looking for the nevuah. He would go to the local navi. He would say, "What does Hashem want from me? What's my tachas in the world? What's the halacha in this situation?" Then the navi would tell him, and he'd be totally set, right? He would never think about, okay, there's a mishnah over here, and there's a case over here, and I'll make a tzushtel, I'll make a comparison, this to this, and now I know what Hashem wants. What are you doing? Just go ask the navi, right?
There was no navi.
But there's no navi, so now we're lost. We have no idea what to do.
Okay,
So you can figure it out.
They met up with the Greeks.
The Greeks said you can figure everything out. You got it.
Started influencing them and saying, like, you don't have God.
Right. So every single time there's something in the world, a koach from the goy, you can either use it to be a kli for kedusha, or you can use it to be a kli for take away from kedusha. It's your choice, right? The milchama of Chanukah was, how are we going to use this new method that the Greeks put into the world, or are we going to make it take us away from Hashem, or we're going to use it to bring Hashem into the world? That was the whole milchama. And by the way, it wasn't a milchama that ended so quickly, even the Chanukah story. The whole topic of tzedukim, which is the Chashmonaim, took over Klal Yisrael. They became the Melech, and Yochanan Kohen Gadol, which was one of the sons of Matisyahu Kohen Gadol, he became a Tzeduki, which means he himself was influenced by not accepting the Torah Shabbat Peh, right? He not accepting the Chacham's Misorah. He accepted what he understood from the Torah, right? There was that same issue continues on, right? So it's an issue, but the Or of Chanukah is an Or that helps us make this battle. Why? Because the Or of Chanukah had two ingredients in it. One ingredient is the war, which is what we talk about in Al Nisim, right? Which is this crazy war where Hashem shows up through the actions of the Chashmonaim. He doesn't make a Kriyas Yamsuf and show up. Doesn't make a nace from Anani HaKavod.
That's how many of the wars were, no? Even
Which?
In the past, before that. In Nachla, when a lot of the wars that they had to fight, and sometimes they were successful, sometimes they weren't.
Yes, but the difference over here was that there was something was bilti afshari. There was absolutely no way it could happen, right? And it was in a world which now in the world of Nevuah, right? The fact that one nation conquered another nation, that's fine. What did Yiftach say to Ammon? He said, "Your Kamosh, your God, he gave you this thing. Our God gave you this thing." So it was very clear the gods are fighting with each other. Whatever God is more powerful wins, right? So it wasn't such a big deal for a guy to believe, Nachal Kishon, that the fact that Sisera lost, okay, their God is more powerful, big deal. I mean, that's not such a crazy thing. But if there is no God, it's all based on intellect. So it's better who has a better army, right? Mm-hmm. And that is said, no, we don't have a better army, and we still win. That was a huge impact on the world, right? Ad kidei kach, like even today, like I told you, that an Israeli guy went to America to learn about the philosophies of war and how to make a better war, and the whole time he was sitting there and asking, and they weren't talking about any Jewish wars. So after a while, he got annoyed. He's like, "Dude, why don't you talk about like the 6 Day War was a pretty incredible war?" He says, "You don't know?" He says, "We don't ever talk about Jewish wars because they make absolutely no sense. There's nothing to learn from it. What are we going to do? It just works. You guys have God, right?" So that's the chiddush that happened in the Yevanim War and is happening in Eretz Yisrael now. It's very clear that our wars, we have the same army thing. We take out weapons and we make tactics, and we think we're going to win, and the reason we win has nothing to do with the tactics. It's something way beyond all that stuff. That was the chiddush of the Milchama of Yavan, that Hashem is showing up through our actions in a supernatural way. And the culmination of that nace was when they came back to the Beis HaMikdash, and the Beis HaMikdash was the place where were they matzliach to take away the holiness, right? What's holiness mean? That we're above this world. Were they matzliach take away and make that tameh and take it away from Klal Yisrael? So what happened was, here's the menorah. The menorah is the siman of the Shas Rosh HaShechina in Am Yisrael. So first, they found the Pach Shemen. Now finding the Pach Shemen means that there's a place in Am Yisrael which you can't mess up, right? There's a place of Mesiris Nefesh, the place of where the neshama of Klal Yisrael is totally going to be present no matter what you do. And it's going to come out and fight and bring things out. So there's always a Chosam and a Kohen Gadol somewhere. And then what happened was, this thing burnt for 8 days. Well, how does that happen? Because when you lit the fire, that's your kli, that's your abilities, but Hashem shows up through your abilities. And therefore you're going to light the fire, and it lasts for 8 days. You show up and make a fight of war, and he shows up and he makes you win against the most powerful army in the world. Shemen is the production of probably because the sphere that it was created from is Chachma. But the way what it represents is it's above everything, right? Chachma is above everything, and Shemen is a liquid that always is higher than everything else.
That's one character. Are there other characteristics also then?
Think about it. Probably there is.
What are you doing? Like how this switch could be sometimes very painful because people are used to a different.
Mm-hmm.
And how we see today, let's
say
the Chanukah wants, the rabbis know one way, but the kids they're different. And all make miftzayim and how to do it, how to bring the kids back, and how maybe we'll do this trip and we'll do that trip, and the kid can stay and learn. But like how? Back in the day when it switched from Nebuah to Mishnah was also like a whole like.
You see that?
It was like natural. Okay, now we were logical, and now we're all like this, or it was like, no, it's also to go in this. This is fear, and this is chodesh also b'natar, and this is I don't know what. Whatever. It was also like it's like.
Probably. What you see that a little bit is in Ezra, where it says that when they built the Beis Hamikdash, so the young people were happy, and the old people were crying, right? Because the old people remember the old Beis Hamikdash, which means. This is not it. Guys, where's the Shechina? Where's the Nevuah? Where is it? It's just not here. Right? And the younger people are saying, yay, we have Beis HaMikdash. We have a new way of doing things. Right? So you see that consistently. And the young people are the ones who are more connected to the new energy that's coming into the world. That's their job. That's why they have exuberance, because they're able to they have energy. Young people we're going to conquer the world. We know it all. We're the smartest people. Like Yosef HaTzadik, right? Hunar. He's got it made. He's going to tell all his older brothers how it's supposed to be, right? Because that's a young person thinks. He thinks he knows everything beyond everybody in the whole world.
We have today, like all these all these startup guys.
Startup guys, right?
These young guys that are starting companies are 23 years old and they're raising, I don't know, millions of dollars and that did not exist 30 years ago when you only top intellectuals that went to Stanford and you know what I mean? Those are the guys making money, but today it's not like that.
You can have a 16-year-old who's a millionaire from TikTok. How does that even happen?
That's not so good. So what do I have to do with this in this world? Some people, the world is not relevant to them anymore. They don't know what. They don't have the kelim even to live today. So many people, even me, sometimes I feel that it's too much for me. I'm not built for this. I don't know. I didn't got this education. I don't like.
It's like when your kids figure out the cell phone better than you do.
It's not that my kid. I don't know. It's not. And I figure. I'm not so mitzvah, and I feel that. I can see people in that mamish. So what is supposed to do? They have
Trust.
They don't have the kind for this world.
Trust. You have to let go.
Yeah.
You have to let go. Let him run the world. It's uncomfortable. It's different, right?
So I told you this. Where I am now. I don't know. It's whatever. Figure it out.
It's 1 o'clock, right?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Do you have that order break class from yesterday?
Ellie has it on his phone because we had such technical insanity last night